Hello, Los Angeles. This is Wanda Coleman.
I'm Austin Strauss.
Poetry Connection here. Minnie's back with us tonight. Austin, you want to tell the audience who our guests are tonight?
Yeah, tonight our guests are poet Ben Saltman and one of his students, Jodi Johnson. And before we get to them, Wanda's going to give us a couple of announcements.
All of those of you who are hip to Harvey Kubernick and Freeway Records, his new album is English as a Second Language. And check it out tonight at Bebop Records and look for further listings. There's going to be several readings in the Los Angeles area featuring several of the stars on the album. Also, for directions, keep an eye on Beyond Baroque. There is going to be an open reading on January the 8th, free admission at Beyond Baroque. That's the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. So any of you who'd like to go out and strut your stuff at Beyond Baroque, see how you hold up, try it. Then Robert Peters and Sherry Fine are going to be reading on Friday, January the 13th. And that's it for the announcements here.
Thanks a lot, Wanda. Okay. I'm going to introduce Ben Saltman and Jodi Johnson. Ben, that's spelled Saltman, Saltman, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1927, and he came to California way back in 1957. He has been a professor of English at Cal State Northridge, been at that school for 17 years, and was a short story writer for a while and decided to switch over to poetry, and we'll find out why. He has published 4 books whose titles are Blue with Blue, The Leaves, The People, Elegies of Place, and his most recent book, published in 1979, was Deck, D-E-C-K, Deck. A very beautifully designed book, I might add. Ithaca House, right, with pictures of cards from the card deck in it, and we'll talk about why he did that. Says his main influence was a poet who's no longer with us, a California, Los Angeles poet named Burt Myers, and very good poet, and we'll talk about Burt Myers a little bit, too. He brought along with him one of many students he could have chosen, and I would like to apologize to those of you, those students who may be listening who couldn't get on this show. We just didn't have enough time or enough microphones, and we'll try to get you on later sometime, I hope. Jodi Johnson was born in 1960 in Pasadena. She's been married a year. She wanted me to put that in. And Ben Saltman has been her only poetry teacher, her main poetry teacher. She's just starting to publish. She's had some poems accepted by Poetry LA and an anthology put out by the Academy of American Poets that will come out in February. We're going to start with a poem by Ben Saltman and then a poem by Jodi Johnson.
Okay, here's a poem called Always Toward Evening. The car ticks quietly in the driveway, smell of oil, and the sooty tires stiffen as metal settles. The oleander, like a criminal, leans over, bland, invulnerable. The windows are still warm. In ochre Los Angeles light, a neighbor drags a trash can to the curb, pulling the roofline, the house. Doors are closing, while amber and blue grow from windows and lie down on the lawns. My neighbor lifts a hand halfway, but we don't speak. Why speak? We know what's coming. I don't doubt him. He doesn't doubt me. The clouds gather up the sky. Birds tumble from shadow to shadow. Across my forehead, the breeze wipes a musty palm. Everywhere, dark ladders are being raised, muffled, knocking against the houses.
That was Ben Saltman.
This is a poem called Linda's Shower. 9 months of flesh swell rounded her new. She felt 13 again, afraid of her breast. The women gathered in a room, thick with mothering, bounced their own babies on wide hips, offered her presents. When her nails tore the thin wrapping, and everyone blinked in the flash of cameras, they felt again the shock of birth. It quivered in them like water. In the end, she will open her legs alone, know finally what they could not give her, what the doctor behind his green mask never learns. If she had stepped just once today into the blue-bellied June morning, she would have seen it everywhere. In orange monkey flower, witch's hair, chokeweed, lupin, elderberry, tiger lily, sweet pea, wheat pale, mustard yellow, purple as thistles, sun-fingered, seed heavy, quiet, single, blazing.
Beautiful poem. They're both lovely poems. Ben, is there a kind of a summation formula that you have when you are working with students where you have an idea of what you're looking for in poetry? What are some basic points that you would emphasize when you first start working with a student?
One of the things that I think is important in poetry is that the poem represents the student and not me. And just as when I read, I want to read another. Well, a student is another, and I want to know what that student has in mind and what that student is trying to do, and I want to sort of help that student bring that out. And I have no formulas. I like all kinds of poetry. There are some people, especially in my profession, who like to draw lines, who like to say, when Ginsberg came out, they wanted to say Ginsberg wasn't a poet, or Bukowski's not a poet, or somebody, because he does a certain thing or doesn't do a certain thing, isn't a poet. But that's not the measure to me. It has to do with the person, and I guess to me a certain intensity. If I feel that that person has something on his mind or on her mind, and it's intense, that's what matters.
Now, do you have a working definition of poetry? We've been looking for this. It seems like at some point, it's point A where you start. Do you have a point A? It may get fluid later on, but do you have a place where you start?
Well, I like to see it as that poetry is a celebration of language in terms of the person, the individual's intense celebration of language. Now, that sounds rather highfalutin, I think, but I really mean that. I really mean that a poet feels that language is going to get him something. He's going to get to the truth somehow. It's going to pierce through the curtains, and that's what a poem is. That's that language that pierces through the curtains and through intensity and feeling gets to some kind of real truth.
So it's not really language really reverting on itself. It's not just self-reflexive like a language poem. It's really language used in a heightened way to get at something else, something perhaps truer or more real than ordinary language.
Oh yes, it isn't self-reflective, and I don't have any idea that my students or any poet really wants to put his poems in a trunk and keep it there. I think it's an act of communication, that truth that the poet is dealing with is something that he wants to share with another. And the language is the language of people. The poet never made up the language. He didn't make it up. He got it. He grew up with it. The feeling is associated with it is what came to that person out of associations and passions and fears and failures. And that's what the language is. It's a social thing. A language is not an individual.
Do you have any problem with students who imitate you too slavishly? Do you have to get them to stop doing that?
I don't think that any student... there have been a few who've sort of liked my images and have sort of tried to write a little bit like that, but so few, and
so
I don't encourage them. No, I don't think it...
I think more than anything, we admire things about Ben's poetry, and that stimulates us to try things on our own, which achieve that same sort of excellence or striving towards a way of using language to express what we feel, but I don't at all think that there's any type of imitation.
Well, you see, there are poets who are such powerful image makers and rhythm makers, like Bukowski and Ginsberg and before him and many others, who do spawn is the word. I mean, a lot of imitators, a lot of imitators, and they do it because they're so overwhelming.
Apostles?
Yeah, apostles, right. And some of the imitators are poor imitators. But you sound like you're very sensitive to the fact that each poet has his or her own rhythm, and you try to bring that out. Let's have some more poetry then, and then we'll get back to some more questions about this. Ben, and then Jodi.
Okay, here's a poem called Neutral Zone. There are 100 pigeons on the plowed ground in light rain, and the sky keeps stumbling on the field, but cannot shake them. I know they would rise together and turn like a large sail, then settle and be as before further on, but not today. I can't see what these mid-city birds see. The corn has come and gone, leaving gray indifferent ground from the soccer field to the corn stand closed for winter. The birds are walking, and their heads bob toward what they're eating, which I can't see. But I think that as we drive by, our wipers softly beating, we want it this way, pure, unknown. Even the jogger in red moving slowly with his hood up, and the tennis courts empty, gleaming with vanished games.
Beautiful last line, especially. Go ahead, Jodi.
All right, this is a poem that came out of a recent trip that I made to England, and it's called Sea Houses, which is the name of a small town on the seacoast in the eastern coast of England. It was still light after dinner, and she walked towards the harbor, Farne Island lighthouse, beating like a heart against the slow evening. Where the town grew from red stone over the beach, she saw darkness rising. The houses sank into it, brick by brick. She imagined the halls inside, swimming in blue shadows. One at a time, lights went on in windows. She thought, behind one, a woman is setting forks carefully beside brown plates. In another, a man sits on a bed, sewing buttons on his best shirt. As a young girl, she had gone clam digging, hanging a lamp on a pole and standing on her own white island. She turned over mud with a pitchfork to pluck clams from their safe sleep. Later, the open shells pleased her, the pale lining glowing in her hand. She had wanted to believe then that if someone could force open the tight door in her ribs, she would shine too. But now, watching the dark pour over the houses, she feels it soak into rooms in her spine. She is filled with small nights. She knows how difficult it is for people in white windows to know anything of each other, their dark, passionate bodies folded separately in hard-edged light. Sudden bright flashes from the lighthouse bend briefly over the sea's roof. They remind her of lightning. She counts the long black pauses.